Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Jed Goggin. Today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Great Escape. Stalag Luft No. 3 was a German prisoner of war camp for captured Allied airmen. Located deep inside Nazi Germany, near today's Polish town of Zagan, the camp would eventually grow to number over 10,000 prisoners. Many Allied POWs felt a duty to attempt to escape, and some tried and failed many times. After 3 men successfully escaped in October 1943, a much larger scale breakout at Stalag Luft 3 was planned. With remarkable patience, skill and ingenuity, 3 tunnels were dug over almost a year, despite intense German efforts to discover them. Nicknamed Harry, the one actually used was over 100 metres long, 9 metres deep, and was ready by early 1944. The plan was to get over 200 prisoners out during the night of the 24th to 25th of March. Ultimately, only 76 men got through the tunnel and made good their escape into the woods before the Germans discovered their exit. On the run were British, Canadian, Polish and New Zealand airmen, and more from other Allied nations. Among them were 6 Australians. Despite the use of elaborate disguises and forged documents, all but 3 were soon recaptured. Some were returned to camp, but on Hitler's orders, 50 were executed. Constituting a clear war crime, those chiefly responsible escaped punishment through their own deaths before the war's end, but some lower-level Gestapo and military were prosecuted. 6 Australian escapees were among those murdered. Shortly, you will hear the story of one of these men. Today we pay our respects to Allied prisoners of war who lost their lives whilst in enemy custody, and to the survivors who returned home. This evening we warmly welcome the family of Squadron Leader James Catanach, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the family of Flight Lieutenant Albert Henry Comber. Flight Lieutenant Comber was interred at Stalag Luft No. 3 prisoner of war camp and was part of the larger group attempting to find freedom during the night of the Great Escape. Flight Lieutenant Comber was a prominent Second World War artist. The memorial is privileged to hold many of his artworks within our national collection. This evening we're also honoured to acknowledge the Honourable James Sullivan MP, Assistant Minister for Justice and Veterans Affairs in the Queensland State Parliament. We warmly welcome Flight Lieutenant Richard Caesar Thwaites, retired, representing the Air Force Association and the National Indigenous Australians Agency delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Star of the Sea College visiting from Brighton, Victoria. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us during war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Squadron Leader James Catanach. James Catanach was born on the 23rd of November 1921, the son of William and Ruby Catanach. Known as Jim or Jimmy, he grew up in Melbourne, attending Brighton Grammar and then Geelong Grammar, where he spent 3 years in the Cadet Corps. Catanach's mother died when he was 10. After completing his education, he lived with his father in the Melbourne suburb of Malvern and worked with his older brother, William, as a salesman for the family business, Catanach's Jewellery. The 18-year-old James Catanach enlisted for an air crew position with the Royal Australian Air Force in January 1940 and was called up on the 18th of August. While his brother enlisted in the Army, James trained as a pilot, attending school at Naranda and Bradfield Park. On the 17th of February 1941, he embarked at Sydney for overseas service. He first travelled to Canada, where he attended service flying training school at McLeod in the province of Alberta. At the end of May, he left Canada for the United Kingdom, where he was granted a commission. In June, he joined Number 16 Operational Training Unit and trained with a night bomber crew as a part of Bomber Command. In early October, Catanach was transferred to Number 144 Squadron, with which he reportedly flew 9 missions before being transferred to Number 455 Squadron in early December. Number 455 Squadron had formed at RAF Swindonbury in Lincolnshire and was flying Handley Page Hampton twin-engine medium bombers. The squadron had the distinction of being the first Australian squadron to bomb Germany. It continued to attack industrial targets in Germany, as well as undertaking mine-laying operations off the coast of occupied France. In February 1942, the squadron took part in an unsuccessful attack on 2 German battleships before having its operational role changed to being a torpedo bomber squadron and transferring to Coastal Command in April. The squadron then deployed a detachment to the Soviet Union in September. This group operated in support of convoys bound for Russia, which were suffering heavy losses. 3 of the 16 Hamptons were lost before they arrived. One of those to arrive was flown by Catanach. After completing an anti-shipping sweep with the Russians, the remaining aircraft were handed over to the Soviet Air Forces and the squadron returned to RAF Sundberg. In June 1942, Catanach was promoted to Squadron Leader, reportedly becoming the youngest person in the Royal Australian Air Force to hold that rank. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for attacks on Hamburg, Essen, Cologne, and Quebec. Newspapers at home reported the honour. In July, he was one of a group of Australian servicemen who took part in a BBC Anzac Hour radio program broadcast from London. On the night of the 4th of September 1942, Catanach and his crew took off in a Handley Page Hampton bound for Vagnaya in northern Russia. Near the end of the long flight, his aircraft was holed in the petrol tanks by ground fire or heavy machine gun fire from a German trawler. Catanach force landed under fire on the shoreline in northern Norway near the Russian border, avoiding ditching in the Arctic waters and saving the lives of his crew. The group were captured by a German patrol and became prisoners of war. Catanach was eventually put into the infamous prisoner of war camp Stalag Luft 3 near the town of Sargan, which today is a part of Poland. He was among the 76 men who escaped from the camp on the night of the 24th and 25th of March 1944, in what has since become known as the Great Escape. Catanach, who spoke fluent German, teamed up with 2 Norwegians and a New Zealander of Scandinavian descent, forming a group heading for Denmark. After reaching Berlin and changing trains for Hamburg, the men were caught while travelling to the Danish border. Although the group had split up to pretend to be travelling individually, all 4 were arrested and taken to Florensburg prison. Handed over to the Gestapo, the men were interrogated and told that they would be taken back to prison camp. On the 29th of March 1944, 2 or 3 black cars arrived. Catanach was taken in the first car with 3 Gestapo agents, including SS Strømflon Blue Johannes Post. Post had his driver stop the car in countryside outside of Kiel. Post called Catanach out into a field where he shot him. Another car drew up shortly afterwards, and Post told his agents to get Catanach's colleagues, Christensen, Ebslid, and Fuglsang, out, saying that they should take a break before their long drive. As the airmen walked into the field, they almost stumbled over Catanach's body. They too were shot. Catanach's remains were initially buried at Sargan, but today they lie in the Poznan Old Garrison Cemetery in Poland. James Catanach was 22 years old. He was posthumously mentioned in dispatches in June 1944. His Distinguished Flying Cross was presented to his next of kin. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph, alongside other Australians who took part in a BBC broadcast in London, is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Squadron Leader James Catanach, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.